Fingers crossed it's going to turn over for us today. We've got the battery here as a backup, just giving it a little trickle charge in case. And again, it's Shell's old Fortuna UASA battery. Still lives. The volts look good. 11.2 with the glow on. 11.5, 11.7 with the glow off. Bit of housekeeping first. After that last event we did at Woodpecker, and we tried to use a tree to get a free turn. We did the glass. It pushed in and took out the glass. So we've done a little notch out here and I've been able to make clearance. We were donated a new glass by a fellow competitor actually, but it just touches there. I want to get the skin on before it goes on its little excursion. Just there. It's got good clearance now. We can put the skin on. So fitting it at 2 o'clock keeps it in that position, open and shut. So I don't want my knees hitting it when I'm uncontrollably trying to climb something. So that's shut. It runs so smooth. Handle. Everything seems to work. Now last thing left to do, so towards the end of last year all we were doing were comps, not much social stuff. So this is how we competed, with the spare wheel in the middle and all the tools and spares in the back of the 79, back at camp. We had that luxury. This run that we do, we need to have all this on board with us. It's a test run, the maiden run on the front diff. We need to see the weaknesses, what's going to fail. We're going to need all this stuff close by. So we put the tyre on the driver's side and the toolbox with all the spares on the passenger side. There's more weight in this, the tail shaft there as well. We've got a couple of CVs, we've got a front shaft, we've got bits and pieces and nuts and bolts, steer pump. It works out a bit heavier than the tyre. Now look, it's unwanted weight, but it's weight we need to carry to be able to get out if we do need parts or bits and pieces. So the reason it's going back to Brian's is because we just got to tidy up the U-bolts. We've got the new brake lines he's going to put in, and he's made up some custom brake line brackets that we'll see. With bullet gone, and while we've got the space there, we're going to bring the 106 in and put it all back together. The CV and fresh Penrite liquid gold. So it's going to end up being one of those Penrite kind of days. We have our pre-packed in molly grease driver's side CV with the 80W90 Penrite gear oil. So we'll get into that this morning. And then unfortunately, this truck being for sale at the moment is pretty much ready to go. This is the first opportunity I've had to spend any time on this since breaking that CV. Make sure it's in the free position before removal. So you would have seen in the previous episode that we did take this CV and axle out up at Paulie's property, and we've been using it without a front axle in. The spindle holds the bearings, so apart from it being only 3-wheel drive, it was still road friendly commuting with it this way. I know it's tempting, and I used to do it. Try and do those cone washers with a small screwdriver over hitting the hub like that. Now it's vital that I change that inner axle seal after having broken the CV in there and forcing it under winch and then trying to drive on it. You can see the broken shrapnel of CV has destroyed that seal. Now I'm lucky, I've got a guy at Toyota and I get all these seals by the bucket loads and cheaper than aftermarket. So here's the seal, and the easiest way to knock it in, I found over the years, is a 32mm socket, but back to front, so that you're hitting the outside lip of the seal into its seat. Now when they're bad, you may need to sandpaper just that front edge, just to get rid of the burrs, if there are any, from the carnage that went on while the CV was broken. In this case, it was that bad, I've had to use a file on that front edge, and I've lost some blood. All right, that should be good enough to get the seal in. Bit of persistence with the file, the round file, very handy. We've got a seal in. That took 3 times as long. We lost some blood, but we got away with it. Let's say you're out in the bush and you do a CV. I think the most crucial part is to get the bearing half right for your trip home. So look, I'm no mechanic, I know Brian can get this by feel, but the everyday person that's out there having a wheel, breaking a CV, you get to this spot, you put the back nut on, hand tight so that we can get the caliper back on. All right, the caliper's on. So the way I do it, bush mechanic style, because you've got to picture yourself, if you're out wheeling in the bush and you've broken a CV, you may not have a replacement one on you, but you may need to take it out so that you can steer. They bind up and they actually stop your steering if they're broken in the wrong place. So we're at this point now. I'm going to show you how to get the bearing good enough to get home. I'll stick 2 wheel nuts on it and nip them up. Now it's double handling the wheel, I know, but if you're out in the bush and you're not real sure how to do it, a lot of people tighten that first nut up till it's really tight and then back it off a touch. So we've got play there. Now that first nut that we put on, we go in and we tighten that up a little bit more. What that's doing now, that's pulling the bearing back into the front of the hub. So we've still got play. Now we nip this up until we have no play. So there's no play there and it spins, but a little bit tight. So what I'll do now is I'll back that off a touch. No play, spins freely. Now I'm going to take the wheel back off, but I'm going to try and remember how that nut's sitting. Now that lock washer is the next thing we need to find. So it'll already be turned back and forward, so we need to straighten that out. If you've got a block of timber with you, a brick, I like to knock it back flat on my tray. So here's one I prepared earlier. Now this is the next thing to go on after that first nut. It's got its slot there, you push it on. Front nut on now, and tighten that up. Keeping an eye on that back nut, that it doesn't turn when you start to turn that front one. You've got to try and remember where it was. Now you've got the 2 nuts tight to each other with the lock washer squashed in there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to turn these tabs, one in, one out, all the way along. There's 5 of them. Now this will get you home. This has been my way of doing wheel bearings for the last 30 odd years. I've travelled around Australia many times having this as my key way to wheel bearings. So it may not be textbook, but it will get you out of trouble. A bit more Penrite P26 brakes and parts cleaner just on the disc before we put the wheel on. So you can see we've we've got a bit of a spacer here for the mags that the previous owner had put on this car. But what they've also done, and this is the correct way to do it, they've put a longer wheel stud in. So you've still got the same depth thread as you would, actually probably more, because of the style of mag they chose. As Brian's taught me over the years, clean, 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 and more clean. Can never be clean enough. Another thing that's very important not to forget, you'll pull that CV out so that you can see the groove which you're about to put a circlip in. A pair of these in your toolkit is a must for a solid axle hilux. So we've got to put this back into its groove. There we go, we're done. Got tail shaft spinning, locked. Free it up. Tail shaft's off. It's all working. The 80W90 Penrite gear oil. So the rear will just be draining the oil and putting in the Penrite LS90. And then this is another thing that could have turned real bad. After he'd sunk it, we got the water out of the motor, but we didn't have gear oil to continue the week. So hopefully it's okay. We'll do a gear oil change now. But you know what they say, bad oil is better than no oil. Yeah, not good. So what I'm going to do, finding this water in here is alarming. We've got the ½ litre that we know we need to put in. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to flush. I'm going to run 100 or so mil of clean oil through it just to see if I can pick off any of the water off the gears. Seems to be coming out quite clean. Yeah, it's quite clean through there. And as always, thanks for watching.